sometimes we have to spend a long time synthesizing, going through our thoughts, trawling through all our different thoughts, and then we manage to let go.
My guest today is Francis H. Powell, a multidisciplinary artist, author, poet, and curator whose work spans from surreal fiction to solitary movement. Now, share, first of all, your personal connection to Palestine and why this cause speaks to your conscience as a writer and human being.
I did some work, I think, for Americans Against the War, which was kind of during the time of the Iraq War. And I've done quite a lot of things concerning Tibet. So I've always kind of had a feeling for oppressed people or the kind of the underdog. So that's kind of like my connection.
How did you come about the Together Behind Four Walls anthology? Do you feel that there can be some kind of resolution to peace, to harmony from an artistic perspective or from any space where you can speak of?
Maybe education plays a part, re-educating people. You know, sometimes over time things do kind of come to the stars kind of align and peace is kind of possible. But at the moment it's looking a bit, I don't know, that things are not looking very good. The signs are not good. Or maybe there could be a kind of gene or something like that basically takes away that instinct to attack other people or to take their land or to be violent, all that kind of thing. Maybe something like that, a gene in the head.
Welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues. I'm your host, Ali Horiat. My goal in this program is to educate our audience about various global issues and how we can help. My guest today is Francis H. Powell, a multidisciplinary artist, author, poet, and curator whose work spans from surreal fiction to solitary movement. Born in England, Francis attended art schools, receiving a degree in painting and a master's in printmaking. In 1995, he moved to Austria, teaching English as a foreign language while pursuing his artistic interests, which included music and writing. He currently lives in Moret-sur-Loing, which I believe is about an hour and a half southwest of Paris in France. And he still continues to write prose and poetry. Today, we're going to learn about his life across cultures and mediums that have led him to produce stories that explore the strange, the unjust, and the soulful. Francis published stories and other works, including his material being published on the Multidimensions website, as well as 3 published books. The first one, The Fish King. His second title, a children's book titled Two Wise Ghosts. And a compilation of short stories, poems, and illustrations that also feature other writers and poets. That is called Together Behind Four Walls. And it features lockdown stories and poems from the pandemic era. The most moving part of this book to me, and there are many, is the purpose. It is to raise money for Marie Curie nurses. And to be honest, this is where Francis and Compassiviste came together again, and you'll hear about that soon. In this episode, we'll explore his commitment to community, his connection to the troubles in Israel and Palestine, and his belief in art as a powerful force for unity in fractured times. We also dive into the imaginative world of his writing, from lockdown chronicles to poetic activism, uncovering what it means to write with conscience and create with conviction. Francis, hello, and welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues.
Hello. Mm-hmm.
I want to start with saying your artistic life has taken many forms, from painting to printmaking to all the other pieces and anthologies. Now, if you were to describe the soul of your creative work, what would it be? And let's trace back all the way to England, moving to Austria and France, and how that soul shaped throughout the eras.
Okay. Well, basically starting in England, I had a terrible time at school, and this kind of led me to take refuge in the art room. And so I spent a lot of time there. And on top of that, I had a very positive art teacher who encouraged me a lot. So that was really good. When I was living in Austria, I was living in a kind of very strange village, a bit away from Vienna. And there, I didn't have much contact with people. So I used to do a lot of music at that time, as well as I started to try to write a book, but I don't think it was very successful. But that's where my kind of writing career kind of made a kind of full start. Living in Paris, by contrast to where I was living in Vienna, it's full of full of culture, full of lots of stimulation, and also there were a lot of very kind of creative people living there who I met or I was fortunate enough to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started painting again because I discovered that people kind of throw things out in the street, amazing things, and I used to recuperate them and then I used to paint on them. So that's kind of it.
A recycling painting story there.
Recycling
and painting.
Well, I mean, yeah, well, maybe the people who threw the things out in the street don't know what they're throwing out, or maybe they got bored of it. And I wasn't just using things to paint on. We also found some wonderful kind of furniture and things like that. So it was very kind of useful.
Okay. And through this period, you kind of, how did you come about the Together Behind Four Walls anthology? I mean, you curated that. What came into your mind and how did that kind of come to happen first? I'll ask that part first.
Well, I don't know. Like for many people, COVID was a very strange kind of time. And I think some people just wanted to sort of, bury themselves away. And it was quite a sort of frightening time. But for me personally, and in fact, not just me, also in a way, my sort of family, my wife, my little son at that time, we started writing things, drawing things, maybe slightly influenced by what was happening with COVID. And then for some reason, I had this kind of strange idea of putting together an anthology. I wrestled for quite a long time, wondering, where the proceeds should go to, this kind of thing. And then it was actually my sister who she's raised a lot of money for Marie Curie nurses, and she put me in contact with somebody. At first, I was kind of just communicating mainly with friends, because I have quite a few creative friends, writers, and so on. And then I started to kind of stretch further afield, and I started sending emails to, famous people, all sorts of people who I thought would be, interesting to have in the book. Compiling the book was kind of fun, and but in the end, I had to sort of self-publish it. I did at a point have a publisher, but we kind of had a disagreement about what the spirit of the book should be, what the cover should look like, and this kind of thing, because it was very, it was all kind of very homemade, the book, and it seemed to, that was really how I kind of saw it, really, a kind of a gushing of kind of creativity during this kind of very strange, rather bleak time.
Okay. And were you always drawn to collective projects? Because when I think of anthologies, I mean, we have the Compassiviste publishing anthology, and it came to me from exactly that, the idea that, if we bring everybody together on this, then we can make a difference. Was that your initial thought process as well, or where did that come out to you?
Yeah, I guess if you do something like this, you have to make compromises now and again, because maybe there is some work that you yourself wouldn't write and this kind of thing, but it maybe has its place nonetheless in the anthology. But no, I've always quite liked collaborating with different people and so on. Like, for example, when I've been doing music, I've been in bands and things like that. I also have kind of collaborated quite a lot with my wife because she's a very good singer, and so we've worked together. It was quite an interesting thing, really, the different people who are part of the Together Behind Four Walls. For example, there was this one woman who I don't even know if she's still alive, but she was a multi-selling children's author who wrote a book that sold, 1 million copies or something like that. And she didn't want to include a story. She wanted to include a poem, I think that her mother had written on, or something like that. But one of the things I think about anthologies is you're not really allowed to be too political, because that could kind of upset some people. So I had to kind of tone this woman's work down I had to be quite sort of subtle. She's quite a sort of feisty woman, judging by her emails. But I managed to get her to tone her poem down so that it was more kind of more usable.
Okay.
There were some other interesting people as well. There was somebody, a kind of English poet called John Hegley. And I'd known about him for quite a while because he was in a band called the Popticians with two members from people who I was at art college with. And he contributed a poem. So it was quite interesting, the different people who helped put together poems for this book.
And for the second one, you came to Compassiviste Publishing, and we named it "We All Live Under the Same Sky." Now, the proceeds, before getting into it, the proceeds through Compassiviste Foundation support the Road to Recovery project, helping people in Israel and Palestine. I want to just give people first an intro. The idea of the Compassiviste Publishing anthology is, its title is How to Save the World. And then each quarter we have one edition that speaks about a specific topic of social issues around the world. And we wanted to do something about the conflicts around the world. And you happened to come across at the right time and say, hey, I have this idea, and it fell perfectly. And we kind of fast-tracked it into our space. And it's now the time for this edition. Now, share, first of all, your personal collection to Palestine and why this cause speaks to your conscience as a writer and human being. And then maybe we can get into why Road to Recovery and why you agreed to continue that support that Compassiviste Foundation had initiated.
Well, a long time ago, in fact, I happened to meet someone, I think they were from Lebanon, and they were looking for someone to DJ, playing Latin American music. It was like in a Chinese kind of restaurant in the center of Paris. And I did quite a few sessions of that. And I guess we must have maybe remained in contact. And then I think maybe he sent me an email or something like that and said, could you create some images for the Caravan of Peace project, which was to kind of make people aware of the problems in Palestine. So for me personally, it was quite good because I became much more aware myself about the subject. And so I did some work, and I guess they must have appreciated what I did. And then we used to go around places in Paris, I think maybe sometimes in the suburbs. And once we were right in the center of Paris in Châtelet, where my work was displayed. So that was my first connection, maybe, with Palestine. And kind of since then, I've always done kind of, causes. People have asked me to do things, or I've proposed things. For example, funnily enough, I did some work, I think, for Americans Against the War, which was kind of during the time of the Iraq War. And I've done quite a lot of things concerning Tibet, like poetry events. They have a big event in Paris, which is for Tibet and the Himalayas. Last year, I did a kind of thing with my wife where we did some poetry. It was in French and English, and we had kind of music in the background and images, and also we worked with a kind of Tibetan musician. So I've always kind of had I guess a feeling for oppressed people or the kind of the underdog. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like my connection.
Okay. And about Road to Recovery, what was it that you kind of found interesting in their work that you were willing to continue with that, as opposed to finding another way of using the funds from the anthology?
Well, I think I've looked at their website and tried to, learn a little bit about what exactly they do. One thing that I guess strikes me is that they must be incredibly brave people to do what they do. And I suppose really what drew me to do a project for Palestine was really watching the news and seeing, injured people, especially kind of children who've kind of been dragged into this situation and the kind of suffering that they've had to go through. So I guess the idea that an organization actually helps to try to get them away and to get them to hospitals where they can receive the kind of attention that they desperately need, I think that's very important, very, very important indeed.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when I was introduced to them through other Israeli friends and colleagues, it was really a matter of they're trying to help. They're trying to look beyond what's happening and keep some kind of humanity and help everyone. And they were the only people who could actually help like you said, injured Palestinians and the children with their hospital needs and whatnot, transporting them beyond the areas that they could go. And so I felt this is truly humanitarian on all sides. There's no political messaging in it. There's no siding. There's no fighting. It's just a matter of we're all human. We all live under the same sky, essentially. Let's help each other do something about it. Now, before I move on, I do want to ask you, though, how do you see the issue? I mean, here we are compiling an anthology and publishing it about this conflict. Here we are supporting a group like Road to Recovery. But when we speak about the politics of it, or when we speak about the decades-long issue, or perhaps even centuries-long issue, do you feel that there can be some kind of resolution to peace, to harmony, from an artistic perspective or from any space where you can speak of?
Well, I maybe for me, maybe education plays a part, re-educating people, It's like, it seems to me, even after watching the news last night, that, there are Israeli people who are desperately afraid of what could happen to their children or something like that. And then on the other side, obviously, there are people who are obviously frightened of their whole lives being destroyed, or the fear that parents have that they can't feed their children and all this kind of thing. But as to a kind of solution to all of this problem, at the moment, at least, it seems very difficult to imagine, because I think at the moment all the situation, not only in this country, but are not really conducive to maybe finding a peaceful solution. But then, sometimes, over time things do kind of come to the stars kind of align, and peace is kind of possible. But at the moment it's looking a bit, I don't know. Things are not looking very good. The signs are not good.
I like that you alluded to education at the start, because I do believe that education is the way that we can resolve this. And I do believe that there are many groups who are providing an artistic escape to be able to come back together and to be able to envision each other as neighbors, as family, as people living in the same land. And that education, along with that mode of expression and safety, can allow people to see beyond culture, history, religion, and to kind of say, we need to start anew. I mean, that's really what happened in Rwanda. I mean, Rwanda was much worse than what we're seeing in Israel on both sides, whether it's the terrorist acts on Israelis, or whether it's the Israeli attacks on the Palestinians. Rwanda was really dark. And today, Rwanda is one of the safest places in Africa. And there's a lot of peace going on. And they rebuilt. And the way they rebuilt was, to allow people that expression, to allow people that, the court of the people, and certain ways of re-educating people and bringing them together as humans living in the same country. So I do believe education can be a big player. And I really think that a lot of the artistic work that's happening there is going to be the solution to the future, and not really the politics. I have friends currently there who are working in theater, in a lot of different ways of bringing people together and allowing them to express and heal and feel that neighborly love together. And I think when you can do that, it goes beyond any disaster that any terrorist group or retaliatory action of any government can create. We hope for the best there.
If I could just say, for example, my father, he was a prisoner of war in Germany for, I think, almost like the duration of the war. And yeah, I think I discovered not so long ago that, he was in a situation where he was with other people being marched into Germany, and, one false move and he could have been dead. He never talked about what happened to him. But my point is also that after the war, he came in contact with quite a lot of German people, and they would ask him, "Oh, have you been to Germany before?" or something like that. But, you can, if you have a strong, I think, willpower, strong personality, you can, forget. Well, maybe not totally, but you can learn to kind of resolve your, all the things that happen to you, all the terrible things that happen to you. So, it is possible, I think.
I think, yes, I think through compassion, that's very possible too, because I've heard stories just like your father's, and what some of these people were able to do, even Jewish people who survived the Holocaust were able to do, was to forgive and to feel compassion for the mistakes, and to feel let me put myself in their shoes and grow up with their hate and grow up with their ideations and ideals and see how I would have reacted. And I'm not going to blame them, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to feel compassionate towards them, and I'm going to help re-educate them through peace. Because, retaliating and fire for fire is really not going to resolve that. It's just going to continue the issue generationally. So what your father did and many other people did is, when asked, have you ever been to Germany? They could have just blown up on the German but no, but they chose to forgive that episode. And even if you don't forget, right? Even if you never forget, because it is also hard to forget. I mean, I've never been in those situations, but I remember when, I broke my leg playing sports, and I still remember it, and I still remember the foul, but I don't hold it against the person that I was playing with when I was 12 years old. So the remembrance is one thing, but the forgiveness and the blame and the negativity attached to that memory is the other thing. Now, the memory attached is the positivity of all the fun things that happened with me and a leg in a cast and signings and being in a wheelchair and my friends pushing me around and, all the good things that happened. The pain has moved on so far along that it's non-existent. So I would assume that at a much higher level than me breaking my leg, when people go through that and they can allow compassion to lead and take over, then, that's really where the hope is. That's really where the human comes in, because we have that capacity. We're the species that have that capacity. And I feel if we use it, we're going to get places just like, your father was able to be at peace because he was able to let go of that. There's no, bundled up anger.
Yeah. I see that as well. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we have to spend a long time synthesizing, going through our thoughts, trawling through all our different thoughts. And then we manage to let go.
Yes. And I've never been through any trauma that I can explain explicitly or say this specific incident happened to me, but just moving from my, uber capitalist lifestyle to just giving it all away and starting over with Compassiviste was a transition that took about 5 years for me. It wasn't easy. It was not easy, really kicking the addiction of money, 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 and kind of, seeing the world as the beauty that it can be. It took 5 years of kicking that. So I tell people all the time, I say, don't expect a solution in 15 days, because it took me 5 years to give up luxury. And that's no trauma. So imagine when you tell someone who's, 3 children have been shot in front of them or other disastrous things have happened to them, to all of a sudden just, snap and everything's changed. It's going to take a long time. It's maybe generational, but we just have to continue pushing on in that direction so that we can reach a solution. It's a very long-term solution. And you said that at the beginning too. You said, right now, we're not seeing that as, the space is not such that we're going to see that resolution. But eventually the stars will align and things will change. And that's exactly what it is. I think eventually people get tired of violence. And I think when
like
that
if you
happens,
take Ireland, for example, Ireland, I think, is a case that you could maybe consider, that people maybe got. It's difficult for us to understand, though, maybe sometimes the bitterness that people have and where it comes from and this kind of thing, because we don't feel that ourselves.
Yes, exactly. And it's really, I remember when I was in school, in one of my philosophy courses, I read a book. I forget the name of the book or the philosopher, but essentially it was, will we ever know what it is to be a rabbi? And I thought, well, no, I'll never know what it is to be a rabbit, but I can think of what it could be. I can just get really that much closer if I push myself, but it'll never be identical. However, what I believe is the closer we get, the higher our compassion, then, you can start to feel more, understand more, and act in a way that supports that understanding. So, when you bring up Ireland, I mean, I had no clue about the Troubles, nothing, because it never touched any part of my life, whether in the Middle East, in Europe, in North America, never touched my life. And it was at a time when I was young. These weren't things that I was thinking about. But as I grew up and as I met people, and as I studied the history and I learned everything, I learned to sympathize with people because I learned to compassionately understand what they went through. I learned why this happened. I learned why, and I'm going to say this, the British government was oppressive, in their actions. So I can now take a stand with Irish people and say, I understand what you went through, but violence is not the answer. And I feel the Irish people themselves went through that, saying, enough, enough of burying our children, enough of this violence, enough of never knowing if you're going in a market, if you're coming back home, or you're going to get blow up somewhere. And so that day, or those days when that happened, and people started saying, let's just try to live together as a solution. Let's just try to, come together and see if it works at all. And then you try and you realize, oh my God, it works. It works just fine. I can buy bread from the Catholic bakery. It's fine. It's the same bread. It's not going to kill me. I'll get by. And slowly you make friends, and slowly things become better. And next thing you know, it's peaceful. You can travel to Belfast. And I think that's the same thing that's going to happen over there, like you say, hopefully sooner.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you about your years as a teacher, because you moved to Austria and you started teaching English to Austrians. And teaching generally changes people because it puts you in that interactive space, and it gives you new perspectives. And so when you were there, I know that there was this growth of empathy through your teaching, and there was this creative output that came into the poetry that you were working with and everything else. So how did teaching affect you? How did you being in that teacher position change the arts for you?
Well, I think for a long time, because I went to art school, and art school doesn't give you a kind of concrete kind of career. I spent a long time sort of doing jobs, not knowing really what I was, where I was going, what I should be doing. So I think teaching has given me a kind of a career. I mean, sometimes there have been ups and downs, but also I managed to retain, quite a lot of very good memories about teaching. I've taught, I don't know how many different nationalities, but a lot of different nationalities. I've taught sort of, in recent times, I've taught kind of like Russian people. I've taught Ukrainian people online, obviously, whereby I had a boy, and I think who lived in a city that, was in the kind of area which potentially could be bombed. He had no regular school, this kind of thing. So I've heard, I suppose, many people's stories because I'm an English teacher and I'm trying to get them to speak, tell me things about their past. So I've heard a lot of people's history. I think teaching can be very creative because you have to, I suppose, touch the right buttons so that the person can, speak and be able to communicate with you and feel comfortable with you and this kind of thing. I've done things like in Paris, I was teaching in a university, and I was teaching people to do kind of modern Shakespeare plays. They were sort of transforming comedies, they chose a kind of Shakespearean comedy and they turned it into a kind of modern day situation. They were kind of drama students, so I really enjoyed that. At the moment, I'm doing some teaching with students, and they're kind of putting together videos, and I guess I've had to kind of direct them because they're still quite young, so I kind of direct them into having good ideas and how to put something together. So, no, I think I have to say that teaching has offered me a lot and maybe also taught me a lot, because I've had to learn quite a lot to be able to teach some of the subjects. So that's quite good.
In the spirit of you being English and Shakespeare, I've switched drinking water to a cup of tea for this show. You brought up Shakespeare,
Right.
so we're going on a tangent. Do you have a favorite Shakespearean play or anything? Is there one that really touches you? Is there one that you really push in your teachings because you love it?
Yeah. In fact, the play would be Twelfth Night. That was because I was kind of force-fed it when I was at school.
Okay.
But not quite recently, a couple of years ago, because I live near to Fontainebleau, and the nearest place to Fontainebleau is a place called Avon. But they have an acting school, and every year they have like a kind of Shakespeare festival, Shakespeare on Avon.
Yes.
And a couple of years ago, we went to see a play. It was a kind of modern take on Twelfth Night, but it was very kind of moving. It began with one of the lead parts just walking around almost in circles, not walking, really dancing, in fact, around the stage. And that kind of led into the first line, which is, if music be the food of love, play on. And the music that he was kind of moving about to was a track by Radiohead, and it worked really, really well.
Okay.
I used to be maybe a bit of a sort of Shakespeare cynic, what the hell, why, what's this guy ever done for us,
Mm-hmm.
On top of the fact that we can't be, scientifically sure that he wrote word for word all the plays that have been attributed to him. But I've kind of become closer, and I just love, I guess I love all the kind of the language that he uses that have kind of become, a big part of our vocabulary, like I want my pound of flesh or something like that.
Merchant of Venice.
So the richness.
That Merchant of Venice is my Shakespeare number one.
Right.
I had my biggest debate in school over that in one of the degrees I did. So you say a pound of flesh, and I automatically go to my number one.
Right.
Sorry to stop you. Go on. You just got me excited.
There are all sorts of things that you use, maybe even without thinking, like all's well that ends well.
Yes. I also learned I got in, at one point, I really got involved into, was there a Shakespeare? Who is Shakespeare? And all that stuff. And I realized there'll never be a solution to that because, it's almost impossible to go back and figure it out. And instead of doing that, why don't I focus on what it can give me? And that's really when I started appreciating the writing for its own purpose, as opposed to let's figure out the sir who wrote it, and let's go visit the statue and all of that. And instead of that, I really immersed myself into the art, as you say, and that's where Merchant of Venice became my number one. So thank you for going on that tangent about Shakespeare. I always appreciate that.
Right.
My next question is going to be about your stories and your storytelling, because they're described to often be surreal, unsettling, or fantastical, like dreamlike. And but to me, I've obviously read some here and there. these are real human themes that you touch on. They're not fantastical in that sense. So I want to hear it from you. How do you reveal through the way you create the realism that maybe is impossible to create in that realistic sense, so to speak, which is why I always tell people we have art. This is why we have art. And then people tend to disagree, and they want art to be physics in a sense of its realism and all of that. And I said that you can't storytell that way. So you're another person who actually is living proof of this concept that I always argue about. So please help me out.
Well, I think there was a quote by Alfred Hitchcock, I think, that, people, and when he was talking about kind of kitchen sink films, very kind of realistic and so on, that, people don't want to go to the cinema to see, I don't know, their everyday life and this, that, and the other. So I don't know. I think with stories, you can kind of stretch them. You can kind of manipulate them into whatever you want. But like with comedy, I would say things that usually make me laugh are things that kind of still are possible, things that I can relate to, and this kind of thing. So I suppose it's a question of balancing reality and, the kind of dream world. But I think human beings, maybe like one side of them maybe is we're kind of wrestling with reality, or the day-to-day reality. And then another part of our brain, we're kind of dreaming about how we would like our lives to be, what this kind of thing. So we're always kind of like maybe between the two things, I think.
And I think perhaps...
But sometimes...
Go ahead.
Sometimes you can, I don't know, read a news story or something like that, and suddenly, that gives me an idea for a story. I'd like to build on that. I would like to do something with that. So it can be like that as well.
True. And I also think labeling causes a problem, because not long ago, storytelling wasn't labeled as fiction, nonfiction, and these kind of, categorizations that we have today. And so people enjoyed the storytelling, kind of like, Greek mythology or Roman myth, or any mythology for that matter, Indian, maybe, whatever history. And even in recent history, you had a lot of storytelling in Germany. I mean, a lot of the kids' tales we have today, came at a specific era out of Germany. And we never labeled it per se. Now we're starting to label things. And I think people, because they're so focused on the categorization of where they are. I mean, you go into a bookstore these days and there's all these labels: biography section, self-help section, children's. I understand, placing children's section separately from adult reading stuff, but what if a biography is a lesson as well as a self-help? Like, where does it go at this point? Can you please, point to me where it goes? I think, it should be broader so that we can appreciate everything in the same space. And so then you're not fighting so much about this isn't realistic, this isn't, how it really works, and you don't have these arguments. So I often fight that categorization and labeling. And I tell people, try to lose those labels, try to look beyond the labels into the essence of things. And when you look at the essence of things, you find yourself immersed into them, and you find yourself connected to them in some way, because the entire universe is one. So you have to have a connection without labeling yourself to that connection or categorizing. So yeah, you are right in that sense. Let me ask you about the purpose of the collaborative anthology we're doing here. We all live under the same sky. The funds are going to Road to Recovery. You're currently running a campaign. I want you to speak about that. Feel free to say whatever you want to say to the audience. And also, what does it really take to get people to pause, engage, and contribute to something meaningful? Because this anthology is meaningful, not just in raising funds to Road to Recovery, but also to the person reading and to the person being able to feel something activate within them from the work that we're putting out. Let's start with Indiegogo.
Well, okay. Well, in fact, the last crowdfunding campaign, I was kind of fortunate enough to have two people who are kind of into marketing, who kind of helped set up the page and everything. So I guess I learned from them. And then they kind of had to leave the project. I don't know why, jobs and things like that, different life circumstances. The last crowdfunding was with Kickstarter. And with Kickstarter, they have a very specific rule, which is kind of all or nothing.
Yeah, you have to hit your goal to get paid.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, for me personally, it was a lot of kind of stress and so on to, manage to actually hit the goal and everything like that. And a lot of people were very kind, very generous, friends of mine, people I know. Some of the people who contributed also were very, very generous. And one gentleman in particular was very, very, very generous because, you ask them, oh, give me a poem or give me a short story or something like that. And then later on you say, oh, by the way, can you give me some money to help towards the book? So you're kind of asking. And also it's kind of awkward asking, friends and family for money. But, a lot of people very kindly, contributed. So that's really good. So this time I decided to go with Indiegogo because you have the two possibilities. You can either be flexible or like with Kickstarter, it's all or nothing. So I decided to go with Indiegogo. Maybe it hasn't quite got the reputation that Kickstarter has, but even so, it's the same kind of principle because in a way there's other campaigns which are kind of, for commercial things, for things that people really, really maybe would like to buy or have or something like that. Whereas basically what I'm doing is asking people to give from their heart. As to the second part of your question, I've thought about that myself. I wondered myself, would I see something and then click, oh yeah, I'll do that. Possibly. But so far, I think it's mainly people who've had some kind of connection, maybe. But it's a lottery. You never know, you never know what you're going to hit upon. You might suddenly, someone extremely rich and generous might suddenly click and suddenly, whoosh, your campaign is really, really lifted very quickly and dramatically. But also it's over a period of time. So, you can't expect everything to come together maybe the first few days. Sometimes people with the last campaign I did, they decided to donate quite a way into the campaign. So I think maybe it's a question of giving them little nudges now and again. That's why it's important to keep posting things on the social media just to give people a nudge so they think, oh, yeah, I was going to give to that. Oh, yeah, I'll do that now. So it's a lot of work, and it also involves creativity because you have to maybe put slogans or advertising material that you think will attract people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to bring the people to the table, essentially. And, yeah, I think the model of all or nothing may come, this is the way I see it, it may come from a place of, if you're about 80% to your goal, a lot of people will feel kind of heroic to push you over the line to your 100% because you're so close. It's such a shame to lose it. Whereas if you're at 20%, the feeling, the marketing or the, feeling of it is, it's not worth it. I mean, there are 20%. There's a few days left to the end of the campaign. There's no way they're hitting 100%. Let's just drop this altogether. Whereas a few days left to the end of the campaign, there are 92%. Oh my God, let's get these people over to 100 because they're just so close. It's a shame. It's that same underdog mentality, right? I mean, they want you to win. They want you to get there. Whereas if you didn't have that, I think a lot of people would look at it and say, well, they hit 92% of their goal. I mean, it's pretty much the same. Why would I contribute here? Because they could just cut that 7% from their own expenses or whatever, and they'll probably meet the same space, or maybe somebody will come along and donate another 1 or 2%. So there isn't that sense of urgency to help and to feel good about yourself for being the person who really contributed to pushing it over the line. So there's a lot of psychological play into that model and that system. But I want everybody to know that we are doing the Indiegogo campaign, and all the information is right here below. So you can click on it and go there and support this cause and support the Road to Recovery with doing the wonderful work that they do. And essentially, their website is down below as well, so you can go and see what they do. And really quickly, what they do is regular Israelis use their cars to go to the borders and pick up injured Palestinians, drive them to the hospitals, make sure they're seen, and then wait there if they're going to be released and bring them back to where they picked them up from, and taking on that responsibility through that whole, dangerous space. And sometimes, disasters happen along the way, but, courageous people doing great work. And we're supporting them because this kind of support brings people together. Early on, a lot of people came to me to support, the Palestinian cause, or to support, the Israeli families who have suffered through this ordeal. And I kept saying, let's find a place, let's find a way that we can support everything all together in one, and help people help each other through this. And so when I kept saying this, people eventually started pointing me to a few places where, Road to Recovery came into the radar. Last question, Francis. If you close your eyes and you open your eyes and all of a sudden you are God, what would you do on this earth that you believe is what's needed to make that progress to social harmony?
I don't know. That's such an enormous
Yes, it is. But
question.
I want your quick question, because when you start thinking about it, then you start analyzing your solutions or answers or your dreams, and you think, well, that may not work. But there's always that one thing in the back of your mind, like, this is really it. This is it. What is that for you?
Oh, well, maybe there could be a kind of gene or something like that basically takes away that instinct to attack other people, or to take their land, or to, be violent, all that kind of thing. Maybe something like that, a gene in the head.
That'll make for a good movie.
But then...
really, imagine if there was some kind of way to, manipulate the tens of thousands of years of, evolution, in a sense, even social evolution, to think, that the fear of flight, fight or flight, and fear and all those other things, and replace them with compassion, a growing capacity of compassion, replacing that gene with 90% compassion and 10%, fear or fight or something, then, we may see a friendlier, a better world. And you know what? I agree with you, because I often say this. I say, one thing I take from the Buddha and the original, not the religion, just the original spiritual teachings, was this ability, first of all, the knowledge that has been scientifically proven today that, our mind works in modules. And so to be able to now take a module and keep it steadily in place instead of, these modules fighting for power in your mind all the time, is what that lesson teaches me from Buddhism or from the Buddha. Because I think to myself, if I'm in a position to right now have an economic advantage in a situation versus a compassionate advantage, and the world we live in today would generally have the economic module really fighting hard to take over that mind and process everything from the economic advantage perspective, discounting the others. Whereas what you're saying is, if we could have some manner of access to our minds so strong, so conscious, that we can always maintain the compassion module, and below it kind of analyze from compassion the economic advantage or the fear advantage or any other advantage through that lens, then we'll probably minimize all our suffering, because we will always think in that way. And I've always thought the same way you have, and I'm amazed that you said that, because we've never spoken about it, and it just so happens that you say something that I kind of think about all the time as well. The social evolution. I think that should be your next book. That should be your next book. Someone who genetically was able to modify this, and the society that comes from it.
I mean, it's a bit like smoking, really, because 20 years ago, 30, lots of people smoke, no problem, whatever. And now it's a bit kind of, oh, you smoke, do you? Or it's a bit more taboo. And maybe in another so many years, God, people used to smoke in the past. Why on earth did they do that?
Right.
So,
I mean, a lot of things are like that. I see sometimes on social media, I see these pages that post things from even, one generation ago, like we're talking 70, 80 years ago, and how people used to put their kids on their laps and drive, for example, cross country. And now it's like, oh my God, how did they do that? Or, they'd let their, their child, I don't know, go across town or something by themselves. And you're like, oh my God, how did they do that? But, it's a relic now, it's a thing of history. Whereas, in the same, and I say this to people, I say in the same sense, your example of smoking is amazing. I mean, in the 60s and the 70s, it was a prestige issue to smoke. I mean, you saw it in film. Cigarette companies were sponsoring some of the greatest sports. I mean, think of Formula One. You had Marlboro all over the place and all of that. And, smoking was cool, essentially. And now it's like, ew, opposite of cool. So, like you say, in a couple of decades, or for sure in a generation's time, people will look back and say, "Can you believe people used to inhale cancer? Like how did they do that?" Right? And so, over time, as we shift and change, and that's what Compassiviste is all about. That support to people, that platform where people can push for that change through compassion and action to really get to that place of social harmony. You're very aligned. You're very aligned to that
right
mindset. So, yeah. Francis, thank you very much for speaking on Compassiviste Dialogues. And thank you for your stories, poems, and anthologies that are more than just expressions of creativity. They're invitations to care. Whether writing about lockdown, loneliness, or going, or the human suffering we see in the world today, you remind us that we all indeed live under the same sky, and that storytelling is a moral act, actually perhaps even a moral duty, to support this social harmony. Now, a message to our audience: you can and actually should get your copy of our collaborative anthology called How to Save the World, We All Live Under the Same Sky, at Compassiviste Publishing right now. Every penny from the sales of this digital work goes straight to Road to Recovery. Francis is not getting a penny. Ali's not getting a penny. Everybody who worked on this is not getting a penny. Everybody is doing this so we can support the work of the Road to Recovery 100%. And we, at Compassiviste Publishing, generally, we cover our internal costs so that the donation money or the purchase money goes fully to the causes we wholeheartedly support through Compassiviste Foundation. So regardless of your political views, we aim to protect the sanity of our fragile health. So helping our most vulnerable doesn't become a political act, but a humanitarian one with the work of Road to Recovery. Please subscribe to Compassiviste Dialogues channel and share so more people can hear about amazing people like Francis Powell. Follow us on our social media. All links to Francis H. Powell, Compassiviste Publishing, Compassiviste Foundation, and Compassiviste and Road to Recovery are listed below. We're here to help change the world together. I'm Ali Horian.